Check. I always wanted to be that guy.
You are now.
Yeah, check.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So we've made that change to the agenda. So can we have a motion to approve the amended agenda? You wanted to say one other thing? Go ahead.
Agenda for the elections. We're just going to raise that separately, or did you want it?
It's on here as part of the, it's 5.
Try that, see if that works. Yeah.
Well, because it's on.
Okay, so I've got that in here as first part of the public session. Okay. Okay, so did we get to a motion of the amended agenda? Did we do that?
No.
No. Okay, Ian, Mary, thank you. All in favor of the amended agenda? Thank you very much. Okay, so we're on to the public session portion. And before we go any further in this meeting, we need to be able to have an election. And based on our bylaws for the PSB, we have to elect annually a chair and a vice chair before we can do anything further. So is there any motions on the floor for a chair at this point? Mary?
I'm not sure if I'm being heard, but I have a motion to reappoint you as the chair of Police Service Board.
Very good. Thank you, Mary. Is there any other motions on the floor for a chair? No, hearing none. I guess we don't need to vote because there's no one else running. Fire bylaw. Mary Lou, do we need a second for that? Okay, so Lisa will second just to be sure. Now we need a vote for vice chair. Is there any nominations for vice chair at this time?
I move Mr. McSweeney.
Very good. Is there any other motions at this time for vice chair? No, hearing none. Ken has made the motion. Lisa, do you want to second that one as well? Okay, very good. All in favor? Yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. So that is taken care of. The other piece that I wanted to make clear is this is item 6, and we're talking about just board appointments and how this will go for council. First of all, I want to welcome you, Mayor Post, who's now member Post in the Police Services Board. Thank you for that. And I also want to thank Member McIntosh for the work that he did with us on the board, and he will no longer be on the board moving forward. And those appointments are coming to council over the next, I don't know, 60 days or so, I would think, right? By March, we should be done. I'm looking for affirmation from member Post, but that should be when we're good to go. And really at this point, just to be clear, it only affects one member of the board, and that's you, Member McSweeney, because you are municipally appointed, and we'll find out what's happening with that as we go forward. Okay, so I need a motion, I guess, to just receive item 6. Would that be fair? Ian, Mary, thank you. All in favor of item 6?
Yep.
Thank you very much. We have 2 guest speakers. Our clerk, Carolina, would like to speak to 2 items. One is the FOI update, and the second piece, I guess you're going to mention just a little bit on graffiti, if we could, in this segment, and then we'll hand off and we'll move on to you, Ms. Darling, and we'll be quick here and respectful of your time. So thank you. So, Carolina, did you want to speak to these 2 items?
Absolutely. Just before I get on to saying anything, are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And I do apologize at the outset that I am not there in person. I was hoping that I could be. I'm a bit under the weather, so hopefully this will suffice, and at the next opportunity I can be there in person. So thank you for including me on your agenda today. I am here to provide an update to the board with respect to the services that we provide to you under our service agreement. So as you know, the town provides archival services to the OPS board with respect to inactive records. And we also provide services with respect to the processing of Freedom of Information requests. So you would have received a brief summary report dated today's date that speaks to that. In particular, it speaks to the clerk's division's work with respect to ongoing transfers of records to the OPP with respect to any active or any records that are of an active or evidentiary nature. So that has been going on since 2020. And it will be completed this year. And that will wrap up with the transfer of 911 call records. So there's that update. With respect to the following, with respect to the archival records or inactive records, we continue to inventory those. There is a large number of them that are of a physical nature, and we've done an overall inventory. An indexing of those records, but I would say, and perhaps Ms. Archer can corroborate, the bulk of the work ahead of us is to go through indexing the records that we maintain in a digital format. So that is where we are headed with respect to those records. And with respect to FOI requests, we did not receive any in 2022, but of course that is a service that we continue to make available and will of course provide upon such requests. So I'm happy to answer any questions in that regard.
Any questions from members of the board? None. Okay, very good. Caroline, are you able to, in this little segment you have, you and I had a discussion about graffiti, and there was a bylaw that other municipalities had. I think it was Toronto that had it. Mm-hmm. And you were just going to offer your thoughts on that for us while we have your time here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, Chair Taylor, you're absolutely right. We had an sidebar conversation about whether or not the town would benefit from having a distinct graffiti bylaw that regulates such activity within the town. Just for context, graffiti is regulated in the town of Orangeville under our property standards bylaw, which was updated within the last year, I believe. It does, the language within the property standards bylaw is generalized enough that it does capture any type of graffiti. And in fact, the way that it's, I can read you the definition for it. The graffiti includes one or more letters, symbols, numbers, etchings, inscriptions, pictorials, unsightly chalk or paint marks, representations, or other markings that disfigure or deface property. And what our bylaw says is that graffiti is not allowed, period, full stop, on private property. So wherever we do receive complaints, our bylaw officers do go out and investigate. We do loop in the police, obviously where we feel as though graffiti has anything to do with criminal activity, and we do advise them of that. So that's for private property. Any graffiti that is on public property or on utility assets like cable boxes or light posts, we do work with those utility companies to advise them through infrastructure services with our direct contacts to advise them of that so that the graffiti can be rectified. And anything that is on town property, public property, we do advise internally to staff to please rectify that problem, whether it's going to paint or remove it or whatever the case may be. So we do have mechanisms to address graffiti within the town that are broad enough and allow us to effectively enforce from a bylaw perspective.
Very good. Board members, any questions on graffiti? Okay, Ian, I'm going to.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me without feedback? So just looking at the Toronto graffiti bylaw, and I recognize that Toronto is a bit of a different ball game than Orangeville, but I found it interesting that the approach in Toronto to graffiti is to describe it, prohibit it, prescribe the protocols around removing it and who's responsible. And then for certain graffiti, they sort of divide it into art, murals, and that kind of thing to regularize it or regulate it. So it looks like there's a regulatory process with even a graffiti panel that deals with those kinds of things. I'm not proposing that is something that Orangeville should adopt, but I'm just wondering whether there are specific learnings that can be had from looking at the Toronto graffiti bylaw and seeing whether there's anything there that we might want to adopt. And that would be council, obviously, not the Police Services Board.
Mhm.
Would you have any perspective on that, Carolina?
Yeah, absolutely. So, through you, Mr. Chair, I did get an opportunity to take a quick look at the Toronto regulations, and yes, Member McSweeney, you are absolutely right. It does allow for it does permit, I guess, artistic graffiti, if I could put it that way. In Toronto, it is a very different ballpark, of course, but if I could just add some context, in Toronto, graffiti would be a much bigger issue that would percolate through every neighborhood, and it would be much more in the faces of residents. What I can tell you from our stats, because I just had a quick look before this meeting, we, from a bylaw enforcement perspective, received 12 complaints in all of 2022 with respect to graffiti. So yes, there is a possibility to further regulate and add more details with respect to how we want those regulations to occur. But by and large, I'm not personally aware of there being a desire in the community, but of course that's council's prerogative. Maybe they have heard that, to add another layer to it, whereas artistic graffiti or graffiti murals are to be allowed. So that would certainly be at the discretion of council if they wanted to add an exception like that in our property standards bylaw. But I just think from my perspective in working with bylaw enforcement, I just don't see that we have the type of volume necessary, and it's not so pervasive so as to create a separate administrative framework for regulating something that we don't really have that many complaints about.
Very good. Member McSweeney, you're good? Okay.
I'm happy with that. Thank you, Carolina.
Thank you.
Okay. So at this point, I guess we'll need a motion to receive that report from Carolina.
I'll move.
Lisa, thank you. Mary Rose, second. All in favor? Yes. Perfect. So at this point, we're on to item 8, which is a presentation by Lisa Darling, who's the Executive Director of the Ontario Association of Police Services Boards. And I understand there's a PowerPoint. Are you able to bring that up, Mona? Lisa, so sorry. Thank you for your patience. We've had some technical difficulties as everyone's grasping here, so it's not running as smoothly as we'd like.
Is that good?
Yes, Chair, please keep your mic on so the voice will go to your laptop.
Okay.
Gonna swing sideways, so it's on the screen. I'm good, but it's the whole. That's okay. Okay.
Sure.
You can hear me as well. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Board members, again, thank you, and special board, nice to see you again. And also to members of the public that are either signing in or here today. I'm, as said before, Lisa Darling. I'm the Executive Director of the Ontario Association of Police Services Boards. I'm just here today to give you a brief update on what we're doing over the next year. Turn to the next slide, please. So this is just a brief history of who I am. I have 27 years in policing. It's been some several leadership positions within. I was with the Ontario Provincial Police for those 27 years. As an officer, I ran corporate communications for the OPP. I was a detachment commander in 2 detachments, and I finished my career in West Region in field operations as superintendent there. I have also, I ran the project management office, also at headquarters, and I have a great commitment to making better workspaces. I'm co-chair of a committee outside of policing that is for policing. It's called Advancing Workplace Equity in Policing, and we do a lot of work on media as well. So I do that as a side gig that fortunately the OAPSB has allowed me to continue. We're doing that as well. This is the first time that the OAPSB has hired a full-time, permanent executive director. Fred Costin, who most people would know, was with the OAPSB for a very long time under contract. He did accept to work, and I've known Fred for a long time. I was a position that I was very interested in for quite some time while I was with the OPP. And again, making it a permanent position is very important right now with the changes that are going to be happening with CSPA. We have to take a much more proactive, aggressive on preparing our boards moving forward as we transition to CSPA. Next slide, please. So here's our focus for 2022. What we did, we reviewed the work that we had been doing to make sure that it was aligned to what we were going to be doing moving forward. And if it didn't align, then we stopped doing it. We also created a strategic plan and an action plan for the next 3 years. I don't think I've had the opportunity to see it, but it is on our website. So you can see our overarching strategy for the next 3 years and the detailed activities that we plan to do in relation to that plan. There is obviously the action plan is a live document. So as things change, if new initiatives come up, we will be adjusting that as we go. Essentially what we're going to be focusing on are the same things we focused on before. So we're working on education and training. We've been working very diligently with our partners to collaborate as much as we can on training for our boards. There's no reason why we should be duplicating efforts with other associations that are out there doing work. And it's also very important that associations for, say, the OACP associations for the chiefs of police are getting the same information we are. They know what we're telling boards, and we know what they're talking to the chiefs of police about. So there's no confusion when it comes to board members asking their chiefs about certain things. They know it's coming because they know we're asking them to do those things. So, and vice versa. We've had some good conversations with them. And again, building relationships again with our stakeholders and partners to improve communication and also on areas of common interest. So what we do find is, although many of the associations and groups that we work with, they be coming from specific different perspectives, we do have very common issues that we have some common understanding and agreement. And those are the things we're working together on to make sure we're moving those quickly. As we know, the CSPA regulations have to be written, some of them, and they're going to move a lot quicker if we have a joint voice on specific aspects of it. So that's what we're working on as well. Next slide, please. So this is just to give you some updates as we transition to the CSPA. Provincial appointees, for the most part, unless something has been identified where the individual isn't interested in renewing or something else happens, the provincial appointees that are expiring within this transitionary period will be extended. We have seen some that are 6 months. They appear to be much longer now, hoping to take the boards through the transitionary period. So if you have vacancies, however, right now on a board, then they would remain vacant unless there was a need to, for quorum or whatever reason the board wanted to fill those positions, then we would absolutely talk to the appointments area of ministry and have those positions filled. Okay, we just go back again, Section 10 board submissions have all they've been reviewed, and most have either been notified or will be notified of any issues with the submission, but if it did meet the expectations of the ministry in relation to the detachment board structure. And again, we talked about training with the ministry. So the ministry is the leading partner on the mandatory training for governance training. We are working with them, and we'll be providing members from boards from across the province to essentially test the modules as they're being developed to ensure that they're easily understood, they meet all the needs the boards have. And there's no the cultural sensitivities included in some of the modules that are being presented. We will be taking the lead on the ancillary training, the complementary training. I think we can all agree that sometimes online training just isn't sufficient. We just don't learn, everyone doesn't learn the same way. And we're going to be focusing a lot on scenario-based training, case study training, incorporating many different aspects of governance into those scenarios so that you have the opportunity to train and try things when you're not in the middle of an issue. So I just think that that's an area we have been great at this point, and we'd like to see more of that system. We do emergency management training at attachments, all the time but we don't have any training with boards when there's an issue that involves security and policing. So that is something we need to start paying better attention to. Thanks. So this is our focus right now. So obviously the Community Safety and Policing Act, we're going to be working on the regulations. We have meetings with the ministry regarding regulations. We put a survey out, and just so you're aware, this will be something you'll see a lot of over the next several months. We just put a second survey out. So we did a survey for the regulations that we're due by January 2nd. And then there's a survey out right now for, I believe it's February 4th, that they're due to the ministry. So what we're doing is we're collecting all the board's positions or concerns, compiling them and submitting something on behalf of the OAPSB. It does not prevent you from doing that as a board yourself if you would like to do that, or if for whatever reason you're unable to make the deadline for the OAPSB. It's just a way of having a stronger voice and being consistent what we're putting forward. So just so you're aware. So those will be coming out systematically.
So sorry, Lisa, we haven't received that February survey.
Because it's being blasted out with that list that we have. So that's concerning issue, and I'm getting other information as well. So I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, I'm happy to be the point person, but yeah, it should be sent to me because we will want to comment on all of the regulations.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Another focus we have right now, we just put out two job advertisements for, one is for an engagement training officer, and the other one is for curriculum development training officer. They are part-time contracts, averaging about 80 hours per month. They are there to support the training needs moving forward for boards. We are going to be utilizing them for, obviously, for adult-based learning, the case studies we're talking about, and also supports in relation to policy development, training on those pieces. And some other work we'll be doing there as well is we will be putting together, and I think I'll talk about later, a repository where you can go to find copies or examples of things that might make sense for your board to have in place. Other training that we will be doing, obviously, we're looking at governance scenarios, like I said, but we're also going to be looking at EDI and psychologically safe workspace training. It's something that is somewhat difficult to do in an online virtual learning once. It's something that you need to be continually being educated on and incorporating into other aspects of scenarios. So we'll be doing that as well. And hiring and evaluation of police leaders. So that's another area that has been brought up as a significant area that they've asked us to take a lead on. And we are working with the OACP as well on how we can work together to do a better job of this. And like I said, we're gonna be providing our own ancillary training, but we're also gonna have access to complementary training. So the CAPG, Canadian Association of Police Governance, does some, I was just on a webinar this morning here this afternoon at lunch with them. They do some great work. They have very topical discussions and great experts. And there's no reason why we would be duplicating efforts when they're doing great work. So we're working with them to see how we can share resources and get that information out to all of our boards, be it across the province or across the country. Next slide, please. So I think everyone should know by now, but if there, I know there's been a few dates gone out, but it looks like June of 2023 for proclamation of the CSPA, and likely late 2023 or more likely early 2024 before it's in force is what we suspect. We have, just to give you an idea of collaboration, working with other groups, I think all groups, we got together when they were looking at the proclamation to enforce dates, and everyone did agree we're going to need some significant time between those dates to really get prepared. So I feel like the ministry did support us and listen to the groups that did bring that forward again as a collective to say this is approximately how much time we're going to need. So again, we're going to be doing policy support, training, as we talked about, and also support through structural changes. And this is specific. It could impact other like municipal boards and First Nation boards as well, because some municipal boards are looking at changing their structure because they can now, but the vast majority will be the detachment boards that are, many of them collapsing from several boards into one board. So that's where we're going to be providing a lot of our supports to help with that structural change for them as well. And next slide, please.
So Lisa, can we ask questions as you go? So on that point, we're still waiting. We don't know what our structure is, right? So you said about collapsing into a detachment. Do you have any feedback for
What was your proposal that you put in?
each?
I think it was separate, wasn't it? I do remember.
Right,
Right,
yeah.
I do remember reading it. So if you have you not heard back at all to say whether it was reviewed?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I remember at our last joint meeting that Dwayne Sprague attended, he said that it had been reviewed, and for the most part, I don't think it had been signed off, but an unofficial approval.
Oh, is that what
for the recommendation that we put forward of 4 boards.
Okay.
So
But that's just a verbal. We haven't seen anything.
No, and I haven't seen anything that says that it's official.
I don't think they have to know anything official. If it's approved, I think it's more if there were issues, we would have been notified that there might have been some concerns with the proposal. So I would say in that news is probably good news from that perspective. You 4 boards now.
We have 7.
Yeah.
You're like me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that you'll need some support with that transition. So there's lots of administrative pieces as well, and even just the administrative support for that board and process. So there has been some good work done by boards, detachment boards already. When I was in Northumberland, they did some great work in Northumberland about transitioning to the CSPA years ago. That may need some updating, but there's some really good bones for that we're going to be resurrecting and providing some really detailed.
I think the idea of the training and the idea of moving forward, like it feels like we've been in neutral for a while. So it'd be great. The sooner we can get going, and the idea of this of early 24 with some training in 2023. And for me personally, I don't know how everybody else feels, but we haven't had a lot of that, right? So that'll be good. Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
The testing modules that you mentioned, Ken and I both had to do the first module. We never heard anything back from that, but the rest of the board didn't have to do them. We're the provincial appointees.
Okay. Okay. So I don't know what the result of that were.
We're still here, so we must have.
But I
never saw anything further
No.
after that.
Me neither.
I don't know. You too. You don't want.
I didn't see it.
Anything.
So I think that they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
They weren't, robust enough. I think that's what some of the, comments were. So I think they've taken another look at it. And when those are completed, they'll start, we'll be asking board members from around the province to do another, speak up and look and see, make it another. Okay, so the other things we're doing, obviously, we're going to support policy development, provide draft templates. We're working on making our website a little bit more robust. To be quite honest, a lot of board members don't go on our website. And we're going to try to make it a place where it's valuable that you need to, because it's the best place for us to share information. And we're also going to be looking at putting in almost like a chat option or a place where, as a board, because here's what I recognized very quickly when we got to the OAPSB is that I get an email or phone call asking, do any boards have this policy? And I can't tell them because I don't have access to all of that information easily, right? So if there's a place where boards can go on and ask other boards that we're looking for support on this, can you share anything? Then we can also, as the OAPSB, collect that information and store it for future, so it can be searchable. But right now, we have to go to people's website or boards' websites, and some have them there and others don't. So there's no consistency that way either. So that's the other thing. Then we hopefully, when we get into training and things, that it should be accessible and recorded and tracked. So that those things will be helping from a structural standpoint. And then again, like I've talked about, partnering for better advocacy. And we're doing some good work in that area right now. And there's some key issues that are very prominent right now that we are doing some work on. It's very early to speak to them, but we absolutely are working with our partners to form the most positive approach to some key issues that are very prevalent that we're seeing right now. And next slide, please. Oh, I think actually just one quick thing about that other slide was evaluation. So that's actually what the CAPG at lunch hour today was about evaluations of boards. It was very informative. I took lots of notes on that one. So we're going to be doing some work on that as well. So providing supports or templates for how to evaluate your board. Many boards are doing it from an external group, putting a survey out or whatever to evaluate how well a board is doing. And the other is how to evaluate your police leaders, right? So we're doing training how to hire your leader, but how are you evaluating them, ensuring that what your expectations of your service are being completed the way you would expect them to be. So those be coming as well. And the last thing was actually Ian asked me to put this on here. So I have put this on for your information. It's about what we're going to be doing with the zones. So clarifying the relationship between the OAPSB and the zones. So the zones, as we move forward, become even more important. The attendance at the zone meetings will become even more important because it's a venue that we have through the structure that already exists without creating something new, where we can share information and train in larger groups. And it takes that stress off people when they are, individuals, when they can actually be in a large group and learn information that way and maybe observe maybe what other people are saying. Some people are comfortable with it, other people are not comfortable with it in smaller groups. So this provides that opportunity. There are things about zones that we need to kind of firm up that have been haven't been completed yet. So one is the financials of zones. Everything is going to stay the same as zones are their own managers of their money that way, but they're going to provide copies to the OAPSB board of directors to be part of our annual audit. So we know everybody's doing everything the same way and there's some consistency that way. So that's the plan. That's the one that's going forward because it's the most palatable, I think, at this point, and it keeps everything as consistent as possible. And we have a lot of other change happening at the same time. again, they're going to be more of an extension of the OAPSB as the association. They're going to be where we really do a lot of our information sharing and communication. And we want to utilize the brands more, the zone more for building the brand of the OAPSB. So even through social media, we're going to be providing training to boards on how to communication training. And I'm probably going to hit up some old friends to see how get some help with that on how to talk to the media, key messaging, all those types of things for you to have for your board. We're going to be sharing some of that also on the website. Key messages on emerging trends and issues as they come up, so that you have somewhere to go when something's happening. For you to look and see, okay, what is our position and you know what should we and what do we know at this point, right? So there's no confusion with those pieces. And if we can get people trained on social media locally within the zones and boards to help share the positive messaging, we'll reach that many more people. So that's really what we're going to try and do there as well. And I think I've covered pretty much everything else. And subject to any questions, that's my presentation.
Any questions, please?
I have a question,
Sure.
but I'm not sure that properly using it. Great. Okay, so that works. So Lisa, just a point of clarification. So I know that one of the problems identified early on with respect to the zones was how they were constituted, and that the proposed fix for that was to make sure that the documentation, whether it's the manual of the OAPSB or whatever, properly reflected the establishment of the zones and their powers and guidelines and the like. So I'm assuming that as part of clarifying the relationship, those kinds of changes are also going to be made.
Mr. Chair, yes, they are. The committee which you were part of did some great work on that previously, so I do have a copy of what that suggestion was. There are some key things we have to modify based on the decision to kind of keep things more status quo at this point. But that has been drafted and will be brought to boards to review. I like to just to make sure that it's comfortable from the zone perspective. We did have
Sorry, and just if I might, just one follow-up, and there's a list of things that have to be done, but one of the things, and I encountered this the first Zone 5 meeting that I attended, were bylaws. So all the zones struggle with their bylaws, and what they should really be doing is looking at a standard template for bylaws and adopting that with whatever regional revisions are required. So I'm assuming that that's also on the to-do list.
I'm very sure it is.
Okay, thanks. I'm happy.
Other further questions from board members? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Lisa. Glad you could come and share that. Looking forward to training and the changes and everything that's going to go on there. So thank you very much.
This year.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Okay, I think I could just rotate this computer and you could be online here and give your report. Does that sound like a good plan? Sure. So just before we do that, I need a motion to receive the report. Lisa, the seconder. Ken, thank you very much. All in favor? Yes. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, so we turn this over to the most exciting part of our meeting. Lisa, you get to see it. It is the ward. You're gonna miss the ward report. Very sad.
Blame you for going.
Okay, I'm just gonna turn that to you. How's that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, this is going to be the fourth quarter for the fourth quarter report for 2022, but we'll also touch on year to date and some end numbers. I'm not going to go into the weeds on it. Most of you have had a chance to review it. So I'll just touch on a few highlights, and then if there's any questions after, we can go back.
Sure.
Okay. Try to pick up some speed here. So going into it, we'll start on the records management system pages. As you can see, looking through, it's nice to see when we see a decrease. And when we get into these violent crimes, it's nice to see, for the most part, the sex assaults are down. As we can see year to date, you know, last year at this time, 29, 25 this year. Where we talked previously, the increase in the assaults compared to 2021, which was 61. And this year to date, to the end of December, we had 93. So again, a bit of an increase, and we kind of put that off to, you know, with more events happening, more things happening in the town, it's gonna cause an increase in those type of calls for service. The other one where we've had a minor, because I always remind people, when you see, you know, a 42% increase looks huge until you look and see that, you know, like the robbery from 7 to 10. So again, it's that's the kind of increase. Overall, in total, at 162 violent crimes in 2021, 218 in 2022. So there is an increase there.
Quick question about these increases and or the decreases. Is there any sort of correlation between the growth in the town, the number of people, the population?
You're probably bang on, right? As far as there is that, we don't correlate that. I mean, we don't track that. We don't have a way to track it. But I mean, if you're looking for options, that's probably a good one, right?
Okay.
With the number of increase. And again, this area becomes, especially in the summer, a bit of a transient where we have that go through, right? So people are stopping, they're maybe not staying, but they're stopping, something happens. And if it does happen, we have to respond to it. So that reflects in our stats as well. What's good to see, again, it's a minor decrease, but when we get into the property crime section, as you can see, break and enters down 35%. So 20 to 20 from, they're up actually 20 to 27 in the break and enters. Where we're looking at is the theft overs. And again, right, the 47 to 35. It's unfortunate that coming into 2023, right off the hop, we start to see an increase in theft overs with all the Dodge Ram trucks that have become a flavor. So there's lots of work behind the scenes being done on that, not just with Dufferin, but provincially on that. But that's become a real, those trucks, if you have one, make sure you're putting your keys in some type of box or something that the signal can't get through, because that seems to be how they're doing it. The other place we've seen increases frauds, and a lot of that goes towards the senior frauds and different things that are being reported. Doesn't mean that they're actually successful in the fraud, but the attempt is there as well. And we've had a lot of increase in those, right? Not just in Orangeville, but in Dufferin County as a whole. And then again, the mischiefs, it's nice to see it's a bit of a decrease. Still a lot of calls, right? 135 in 2021, 124, and that bleeds into where we talk about graffiti and some of the mischief that goes on, right? And again, overall total in the year to date for property crimes, that's where it's nice to see a bit of a decrease there. 673 in 2021 down to 624 in 2022. So one of the areas going into the drug crime stuff now, as you can see, our community street crimes unit really put a push on the trafficking end of drugs this year. And I mean, it paid off. We did a lot of good press release on some of the stuff that they got involved in. But as you can see on the trafficking end of things, right? Last year, 8, this year, 21. Last year, they kind of focused more on the possession end of things. And this year, they really took a hit and a run at the trafficking. So it was good to see that those numbers, the results were there, that's for sure. And as we said, and I can talk about it easily, like we did some quick math for the numbers, and last year overall in Orangeville, 5,193 calls for service, and this year up a bit, 5,408. So an increase of 215 calls, which it's an increase, but it's it's definitely a sustainable increase. That's for sure. Moving into the charges section here, as this chart, this is basically for Dufferin County, not just Orangeville, but it kind of breaks down all for the October, November, December, all the different styles of charges that were laid for a total of in 3 months, 2,105 charges. So, I mean, when I see numbers like that, I definitely know that the men and women of Dufferin OPP are working. There's a lot of work going in there, and that's just the charges. That doesn't also reflect any of the warnings or contacts. And we're big on the contacts as well, right? So that visibility piece, which emulates into a public safety kind of thing. When people see the police, they feel safe. At least we want them to anyway. So a lot of good work being done. We go into the part ones. So those are the ticket charges. And as you can see, a lot of increase compared to last year. Total, 1,281 tickets. This year, 1,439. So a lot of highway traffic enforcement being done in there, and that reflects. And I can always say, those are the actual charges that were laid. You can double and sometimes triple that on the contacts, right? Because not everybody gets a ticket.
Mhm.
And you had that experience on your ride along.
We did. What he's referring to is I had the opportunity to decide if people got tickets or not. And I didn't give tickets to anybody.
But it's still a contact, right? You're still there,
Yes.
right? They were still
Softy. Oh, yeah. I was asked for my opinion. Yes.
That's okay.
That's right.
okay.
Thank you, Ian.
And then into the part threes, which are the summonses to court for any offense over $500. And you can see again an increase, 109 last year, 168 this year. So a nice substantial increase there as well in the charges that were being laid. Moving into the traffic control registry, these are all the motor vehicle collisions. And again, I'm not going to touch on all of these, but as you can see, definitely an increase in the last quarter. Again, due to road conditions. Always like to look down and see, what we've got. Some inattentive drivers, some excess speed, failed yields. So there's all definitely kinds there. And in this chart, it shows a comparison to 2021. So motor vehicle collisions where there were injuries, we went up to 29 from 24. And property damage collisions, we went from 316 up to 425. So definitely an increase, which goes back to, remember Rose's comments about more people, more things going on, more cars on the road, which end up, when drivers sometimes make bad decisions, ends up in collisions, right? So. False alarm registry, as you can see, for that last quarter, there was a total of 104. And as I kind of quick look through, you see a few repeats in there.
What happened to Walmart?
Yeah, obviously somebody was pushing the button. There's a lot there. And what else we got? Just some action planning stuff we can go through. Again, foot patrol, I look at the year-to-date numbers. So just under 700 hours of foot patrol in town. Ride hours, 420 and 3/4 hours of ride done. Trouble with youth occurrences, we like to track those, 112 for the year. Mental health occurrences, again, 385 for the year. And that just specifies Orangeville as well, right? So our MCERT team was quite busy and we had a lot of really good success with them. So the hope is that we continue to come up with some ways to get some permanent funding. And because we've shown that that's a needed thing within Dufferin County. So it's going to come down to where's the funding come from. And we have some meetings scheduled coming up in February to try and figure out how do we keep that partnership going and how do we get the funding to keep it going, right? Mm-hmm. Because the grants that Mary Lou wrote pay for the officer. The grants that we wrote through the SolGen grant is paying for the nurses, the MCERT nurses. And everything will eventually come to an end, right? We won't lose that officer, but we could technically lose those MCERT nurses, right? So those are what we want to keep out there. So
agreed.
We have to do some strategy there, that's for sure. Impaired by alcohol, and again, year to date, 20. So again, still the message not sinking in. We still have, charges, and that's just in town, which is, to me, is high. I still think like 20 people caught for impaired driving in Orangeville over the years is a lot, right? And then impaired by drug, we had 3, which again is still 3 too many. Going into the ride grants, to date, we had 3,635 vehicles checked. And the other thing that, we put a few blitzes on this year for distracted driving, which is basically cell phone. And again, in Orangeville alone, we had 146 charges of distracted driving. So that is a lot. And I always like to give a shout out to our auxiliary unit. We're a small unit. We're trying to recruit to get some more people. But if you look at the hours that these people are putting in on top of their full-time jobs, it's incredible. And they do some great work. So always give a shout out to our auxiliaries. They really help us out when we need them and show up at events and do some foot patrols and do different things for us. That is great work. Finally, just a little media release there, our wrap up for our festive ride. And again, right, some great numbers, 227 ride programs, 27 drivers charged with impaired operation over that period of time, right? November 17th to January 2nd, 27 impaired drivers, 6 drivers charged with, or not charged, but issued the warrant range license suspension. So again, it's the message isn't sinking home, but we're definitely out there and doing our best to keep those drivers off the roads.
On that last point, any of the figures for Dufferin, do you have the figures just for Orangeville?
So on the ride campaign, I do not have it broke down specific, right? We can go back to year to date, which will also be included in there. But I don't have it broke down specifically for that ride grant.
Very good.
And that, barring any questions, Mr. Chair, is the final report for 2022.
Thank you. Any other questions, board members? I just have, Ken, you just appeared on the screen.
I'm here.
Did you have a question?
No, I said no.
No.
I'm shaking my head.
Okay.
No.
Thank you. So my question for you, Inspector Ward, is I'm just curious, we were having an offhand discussion about staffing levels. Are you fully staffed at this time, or what's going on in the detachments?
So no, at this time, I'm not fully staffed. I'm looking at approximately 9 vacancies right now. What happened was we had a couple people get promoted, transfer out, and we've also had a few of the Orangeville officers that have amalgamated in. They were required to stay here for 18 months. And now that they've passed that 18 months, we've had about 4 or 5 of them have put in and gotten lateral transfers to other areas of the province. Mm-hmm. So we are scheduled to get 4 more recruits in the spring. Knock on wood. And then it's just a matter of laterals and seeing what else is, there's mm-hmm. always going to be that ebb and flow of staffing, right? Well, mm-hmm. It would be nice to say, yeah, we're at 100%. But compared to other detachments in Central Region, we're in pretty good shape. I mean, I think we're at 72% availability for frontline. And unfortunately, some other detachments and detachment commanders are struggling. So the service is not suffering. It would just be nice to have those extra bodies to tighten up our staffing. Mm-hmm. But we'll see how it goes in 2023.
Okay. If I could, and just move my topic. My last question would be, you mentioned the service isn't suffering at 72% and not challenging those notions. Just the thought of the rest of the officers, how are they managing through? Is their mental health? And I know it's a strange question, but are they feeling relaxed? Are they rested? Are they getting their holidays?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's entitled to their. So it's up to them if they put in for the overtime or they do extra time. That's kind of back on them. Morale is still very good at this detachment.
Good.
There's a lot of good work being done, which shows me that morale is still good too, right? And I try to make sure that I have contact with all the officers and talk to them as much and try to do some one-on-ones and keep the keep the leadership piece intact as well. And I'm not really hearing any negativity at all. So
Great.
we're trying to keep that pushing forward.
Okay.
So
Any other board members? Okay, so Mary, Ian, thank you. All in favor? Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone. So that is the ward report. Time check, we're at 6:15. Mona, have you heard? Are we able to keep going, or are we? Okay, okay. So at this point, we will have to reset, or I guess we'll have to adjourn for tonight, and we will have to call another meeting at a later date. Maybe we can do that through email and set up a time and figure out what that's going to be. That sound fair, board members?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a bit of an uneventful evening. If you were watching, it was a bit trying here due to technology issues. So my apologies to everyone, but here we are at 6:15, and we're going to adjourn for the evening, and we'll get back to everybody with when the rescheduled to finish off our meeting. Okay, so motion to adjourn. Mary, Lisa, second. All in favor? Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Have a
good night, Ken.
Good night.